Cheating husband mocked his wife's final message until he saw the ultrasound she left on the table. The gray Dallas morning hung heavy with humidity as Logan Mitchell pushed through the front door of his suburban home, his designer shirt wrinkled and reeking of cheap perfume that wasn't his wife's. At 35, Logan had perfected the art of entitlement, successful enough to afford his arrogance, handsome enough to believe his own lies, and careless enough to think consequences were for other people. He dropped his keys on the marble entryway table with the casual indifference of a man who'd spent the night wrapped around Rebecca Lane, 28 years old, and as cold as she was beautiful. Rebecca had a way of making infidelity feel like rebellion, convincing Logan that his marriage was just an outdated contract, keeping him from living his best life. The house felt different, quieter. Logan loosened his tie, expecting to find Emily Mitchell, his wife of 7 years, bustling around the kitchen, preparing his coffee with the same gentle devotion she'd shown since their wedding day. Emily, 32, had built their home into a sanctuary of warmth and love, even as Logan had spent the last 2 years methodically destroying it from the inside. Instead, he found silence, and an envelope on the dining room table. His name was written across the front in Emily's careful handwriting, the same script that had once penned love notes in his lunch bag when they were newlyweds. Oh, for crying out loud, Logan muttered, rolling his eyes. More drama. He tore open the envelope with the same carelessness he'd shown their marriage vows, expecting another tearful plea or desperate ultimatum. Emily had caught him in lies before. Unexplained late nights, mysterious phone calls, credit card charges from restaurants he'd never taken her to. Each time she'd confronted him with hurt in her eyes and hope in her voice, believing his elaborate explanations and empty promises. But this letter was different. Logan, I'm tired of being the only one fighting for us. I'm tired of pretending I don't see the lipstick on your collar or smell her perfume on your skin. I'm tired of loving someone who treats my heart like it's disposable. I used to think marriage meant forever. I used to think you'd remember the man who promised to cherish me. But watching you lie to my face while I pretend to believe you has become more exhausting than healing from the truth. I won't be here when you get home. Don't look for me. Don't call. Don't send flowers or write apologies you don't mean. I'm choosing me this time. Emily. Logan read it twice, then laughed. Actually laughed. The sound echoed through the empty house like a cruel joke. He shook his head, crumpling the letter slightly in his fist. She's being dramatic, he said aloud to the silence. She'll be back by dinner. They always come back. His phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. Hotel room tonight? Can't wait to celebrate your freedom. Logan was typing his response when something caught his eye. Another envelope smaller than the first, sitting precisely where Emily had left it. This one was sealed with clear tape, and written across the front in blue ink were 5 words that would haunt him forever. So you understand what's lost. His fingers trembled as he opened it. Inside was a black and white photograph, grainy and mysterious, with measurements and medical terminology printed along the edges. At first, Logan couldn't process what he was looking at. Then the reality hit him like a freight train. An ultrasound. 8 weeks and 3 days. On the back, in Emily's handwriting, I was going to tell you on our anniversary next month, but you were busy building a life that didn't include me. The phone slipped from Logan's fingers, clattering against the hardwood floor. The crumpled letter fell beside it. His legs gave out, and he found himself sitting at the dining room table where they'd shared thousands of meals, staring at the image of the child he'd never know. 8 weeks ago, he'd been in Miami with Rebecca, posting pictures on social media while Emily was home alone, probably discovering their miracle and planning how to share the news with the husband who was too busy betraying her to notice. The house suddenly felt massive and suffocating at the same time. Every corner held memories of Emily's laughter, her gentle presence, her unwavering love. The coffee mug she'd painted for his birthday sat in the kitchen. Her favorite blanket was still folded on their couch. Her garden bloomed outside the window, tended with the same care she'd given their marriage until the very end. And he'd thrown it all away for Rebecca's empty promises and his own selfish desires. Logan clutched the ultrasound to his chest and, for the first time in years, felt the full weight of what he'd truly lost. But Emily was already 3 hours away, sitting in her mother's living room in Austin, finally breathing freely for the first time in months. Logan sat at the dining table for 3 hours, clutching the ultrasound photo until his fingertips went numb. The afternoon sun shifted across the hardwood floors, casting long shadows that seemed to mock his stillness. Every tick of Emily's grandmother's antique clock, the one she'd lovingly restored for their 3rd anniversary, hammered against his skull like an accusation. His phone buzzed incessantly. Rebecca's texts grew increasingly impatient. "Where are you? Thought we were celebrating. Logan? Hello? Don't tell me you're having second thoughts about that pathetic wife of yours." The word pathetic made his stomach turn. For 2 years he'd let Rebecca poison his view of Emily, convincing him that his wife's devotion was weakness, that her unconditional love was boring, that he deserved more excitement than quiet dinners and gentle conversations about their future. Now, staring at the proof of that future, a future Emily had been nurturing while he was busy destroying it, Logan felt sick. He finally picked up his phone and dialed Emily's number. It went straight to voicemail. Her voice, recorded months ago when things were still salvageable, was cheerful and warm. "Hi, you've reached Emily. I can't come to the phone right now, but leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Have a blessed day." The beep felt like a gunshot. Emily, it's me. I found the photo, the ultrasound. Baby, why didn't you tell me? I would've." His voice cracked. "Please call me back. We need to talk about this. About us. About our baby." He hung up and immediately called again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. On the 5th attempt, a different voice answered. Stern, protective, familiar. "She doesn't want to talk to you, Logan." Dorothy Chambers, Emily's mother, had never liked him. From the beginning, she'd seen through his charm to the selfish man underneath. Emily had always defended him, making excuses for his behavior, believing in the man she thought he could become. "Mrs. Chambers, please. I need to speak with Emily. I know about the baby. I can explain everything." "Explain?" Dorothy's laugh was bitter. "Explain how you were in Miami posting pictures with your girlfriend while my daughter was home alone, throwing up every morning and trying to decide whether to bring a child into a broken marriage? Explain how you missed every sign that she needed you because you were too busy not caring." Logan's throat constricted. "How did you—" "She told me everything, Logan. Every lie, every betrayal, every night she cried herself to sleep while you were out living your best life." Dorothy's voice grew harder. "She's done protecting you from the consequences of your choices. I love her. I love Emily. And I want to love our baby. I made mistakes, but no." The word hit like a sledgehammer. Mistakes are forgetting anniversaries or leaving dishes in the sink. What you did was a choice. Every day for 2 years, you chose someone else over your wife. You chose to lie to her face. You chose to make her feel like she wasn't enough. Logan closed his eyes. "Where is she? I need to see her. She's somewhere safe, healing from the damage you caused. And she's staying there." The line went dead. Logan threw his phone across the room, watching it shatter against the wall beside Emily's favorite photograph. Their honeymoon in Napa Valley, both of them laughing in a vineyard, her eyes bright with the kind of joy he'd slowly stolen from her. By evening, his desperation had transformed into frantic action. He drove to every place Emily might go, her sister's house in Frisco, her best friend Sarah's apartment, even the small church where she volunteered on weekends. Everyone gave him the same cold reception, the same protective silence. At the church, Pastor Williams, a man who'd counseled them through rough patches before, met Logan at the door with unexpected firmness. "Emily asked me to give you this if you came looking for her," he said, handing over a manila envelope. Inside were copies of everything: bank statements showing Logan's expensive dinners and hotel charges, phone records revealing hundreds of calls to Rebecca's number, even photographs. Logan's arm around Rebecca at restaurants, walking hand in hand through downtown Dallas, kissing in the parking lot of the Hyatt where they'd spent so many afternoons. Emily had known everything. For months, she'd been collecting evidence while hoping he'd come to his senses. She'd been giving him chances to confess, to change, to choose their marriage over his affair. Instead, he'd grown bolder, more careless, more convinced of his own invincibility. At the bottom of the stack was a handwritten note. "Logan, I hired a private investigator 3 months ago, not because I wanted to catch you, but because I needed to know if I was going crazy. If the man I married was really capable of looking me in the eye every morning and lying. You were. I don't hate you for falling out of love with me. I hate you for pretending you hadn't. I hate you for letting me hope while you planned my replacement. I hate you for making me feel like I wasn't worth the truth. Our baby deserves better than a father who treats love like it's disposable. Don't contact me again. Emily P.S. Rebecca knows about the pregnancy now. Ask her how excited she is about becoming a stepmother." Logan's blood ran cold. He grabbed his broken phone, trying to call Rebecca, but the screen was too damaged to function. He drove to her apartment in uptown Dallas, taking the stairs two at a time to the 5th floor. When she opened the door, her usual seductive smile was replaced by barely concealed panic. "Finally," she said, but her voice was strained. "We need to talk." "You know," Logan said, pushing past her into the apartment. "You know about the baby." Rebecca poured herself a large glass of wine, something she'd never needed before when they were together. "Your wife's mother called me, told me all about your little situation." "Situation?" Logan stared at her. "That's our baby you're talking about." Rebecca's laugh was sharp, ugly. "Our baby? Logan, honey, I never signed up for playing house with someone else's pregnant ex-wife. I'm 28 years old. I'm not ready to be anyone's stepmom, especially not to the child of a woman who hates me." The words hit Logan like physical blows. For 2 years, Rebecca had talked about their future, about how perfect they were together, about how Emily was just holding him back from his true happiness. Now, faced with the reality of that future, complicated by responsibility and consequences, she was already running. "But we love each other," Logan said weakly. Rebecca set down her wine glass and moved to the window, looking out at the Dallas skyline. "We had fun together, Logan. Great sex, exciting adventures, no strings attached. But love? Real love means staying when things get messy. Real love means sacrificing for someone else's happiness." She turned back to him, and for the first time, he saw her clearly, not as the exciting escape from his boring marriage, but as someone just as selfish and shallow as he'd become. "You had that kind of love," Rebecca continued. "Emily loved you that way, and you threw it away for this." She gestured between them. "For something that was never meant to last." Logan sank onto her leather couch, the ultrasound photo still clutched in his hand. "So that's it? You're leaving too?" Rebecca was already moving toward her bedroom. "I'm going to visit my sister in Denver for a while. Let this whole thing blow over. Maybe you should focus on figuring out how to be a father to a child whose mother never wants to see you again." As she disappeared into the bedroom to pack, Logan realized he was truly alone for the first time in his adult life. No wife who loved him unconditionally, no mistress who promised him everything, just the photograph of a child he'd never hold, and the growing weight of understanding what he'd destroyed in his pursuit of something that had never been real at all. Meanwhile, 3 hours south in Austin, Emily sat in her childhood bedroom, one hand resting on her barely visible belly, finally allowing herself to imagine a future filled with love instead of lies. 2 weeks after Emily's disappearance, Logan's carefully constructed world began to crumble in ways he hadn't anticipated. The first crack came on a Tuesday morning at his insurance firm in downtown Dallas, when his secretary Brenda, a 60-year-old woman who'd known Emily since their engagement, placed his coffee on his desk with unusual coldness. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, her voice stripped of its usual warmth. "Your wife called yesterday. She asked me to remove her from all company event lists." Logan looked up from his computer. "What did you tell her?" Brenda's lips pressed into a thin line. "I told her I was sorry for what she's going through and that she's welcome back any time." She paused. "I also told her that some people don't deserve the good things they have until it's too late to matter." The judgment in her voice was unmistakable. Logan realized with growing horror that Emily had reached out to their shared social circle, not to cause drama or seek revenge, but simply to extract herself cleanly from the life they'd built together. His phone rang. David Turner, his business partner and supposed best friend. "Logan, we need to talk." David's voice was strained. "Can you come to my office?" 20 minutes later, Logan sat across from David in the corner office, watching his oldest friend struggle to find words. "Janet told me about Emily," David finally said. Janet was David's wife, who'd been in Emily's book club for 3 years. "She said that you've been," he ran his hands through his hair. "Jesus, Logan." "Emily? Really? Sweet, loyal Emily?" "It's complicated, Dave." "No, it's not." David's voice hardened. "Janet showed me the photos. Rebecca Lane from the Riverside agency, right? That real estate agent you met at the Fletcher account? Emily knows everything, Logan, the hotels, the trips, the lies, and she's pregnant." The word pregnant hung in the air like an accusation. "I didn't know about the baby," Logan said weakly. "That makes it worse, not better." David stood up, walking to his window. "Emily was at our anniversary party 3 months ago, remember? She barely touched her wine, kept running to the bathroom. Janet noticed. Said she looked green around the gills but was glowing at the same time. You know what Emily told Janet when she asked if she was feeling okay?" Logan's stomach dropped. "What?" She said she was hoping to have good news to share soon, but she wanted to wait until she was sure. She wanted to surprise you properly. David turned around. While she was planning how to tell you about your first child, you were posting Instagram photos with your mistress in South Beach. The weight of David's disappointment was crushing. They'd known each other since college, had been best men at each other's weddings. David had watched Logan fall in love with Emily, had seen how happy she made him. Janet doesn't want to see you anymore, David continued. And honestly, I'm struggling with this partnership. How can I trust you with our clients' families when you couldn't honor your own marriage? Meanwhile, in Austin, Emily was experiencing her own revelations, but hers were leading to strength rather than destruction. Her mother's house on Elm Street felt like a sanctuary. The same wallpaper from her childhood, the same creaky stairs, the same sense of unconditional safety. Dorothy Chambers had turned the spare bedroom into a temporary nursery, complete with a rocking chair that had belonged to Emily's grandmother. You don't have to decide everything today, Dorothy said as they sat on the back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in soft pastels. Emily's hand rested on her small bump, now 14 weeks along and finally showing. I know, Emily said, but I feel like I'm finally thinking clearly for the first time in years. She'd started seeing Dr. Linda Foster, a counselor who specialized in helping women rebuild after betrayal. The sessions were difficult but illuminating. You spent so much energy trying to save a marriage that only one person was fighting for, Dr. Foster had told her during their second session. Now you get to discover who Emily is when she's not constantly worried about whether she's enough. Emily was discovering she was stronger than she'd imagined, though some days were harder than others. She'd already found a job at Austin Community College, working in their student services department. The salary was modest, but the health insurance was excellent, and the environment was supportive. Her supervisor, Mrs. Garcia, was a single mother herself who understood the challenges Emily faced. Not every day was good. Sometimes Emily woke up crying, wondering if she'd made the right choice. Sometimes she caught herself reaching for her phone to call Logan, only to remember why that wasn't an option anymore. The pregnancy hormones didn't help. One moment she felt invincible. The next, she was sobbing over a commercial about families. You have that look, Dorothy observed, studying her daughter's face. What look? The same look you had when you were 7 and decided to build a treehouse by yourself. Determined, focused, a little stubborn. Emily smiled, the first real smile she'd felt in months. I've been thinking about names. If it's a boy, maybe Liam. It means strong-willed protector. And if it's a girl, Grace. Because I feel like I'm finally living by grace instead of constantly trying to earn love. Her phone buzzed. Another call from Logan, the 15th this week. She'd stopped answering after the first few desperate voicemails, but he kept trying. He came by St. Mark's again, Dorothy said quietly. St. Mark's was their old church in Dallas where Emily still had friends who kept her mother informed. Pastor Williams said he looked terrible, asked if there was any way to get a message to you. Emily's expression hardened slightly. What kind of message? That he's sorry, that he wants to be a father, that he'll do anything to make things right. Emily was quiet for a long moment. Her hand moved to her phone, thumb hovering over Logan's number. For a terrifying second, she imagined answering his next call, hearing him cry, maybe even meeting him somewhere neutral to talk. The fantasy lasted exactly 3 heartbeats before reality crashed back. She remembered the lipstick stains, the late nights, the way he'd looked her in the eye and lied effortlessly while she'd been carrying his child. Mom, do you remember when I was 16 and Tommy Brennan broke up with me right before prom? I cried for weeks, convinced I'd never find love again. You were heartbroken, but you went to prom anyway with your friends and had a wonderful time. Exactly. I learned I could survive disappointment. I learned I didn't need someone else to validate my worth. Emily touched her belly gently, her resolve strengthening. This is bigger than prom, obviously, but the principle is the same. I don't need Logan to rescue me from the consequences of his own choices. That evening, Emily made a decision that would have been impossible 3 months earlier. She blocked Logan's number, not out of anger, though anger was certainly there, not out of spite, though he deserved it. She blocked him because she was finally choosing peace over chaos, clarity over false hope. She was choosing herself and her baby over the man who had proven, repeatedly, that he couldn't be trusted with either of their hearts. Back in Dallas, Logan was discovering that his professional life was crumbling alongside his personal one. Word had spread through their social and business circles. The Riverside agency had quietly ended their contract with his firm, Rebecca's connections there making continued partnership awkward. The Fletcher account, worth nearly $200,000 annually, had moved to a competitor. Even his gym buddy Derek Williams had stopped returning texts. The Thursday night poker game he'd attended for 5 years had mysteriously moved to a different night without informing him. Logan was learning that in a community where relationships mattered, destroying a marriage to someone as beloved as Emily came with a social cost he'd never considered. As he sat alone in his empty house surrounded by reminders of the woman who'd loved him completely, Logan began to understand that he hadn't just lost a wife. He'd lost his integrity, his reputation, his closest friendships, and his future as a father. But Emily was just getting started. 3 months had passed since Emily left Dallas, and autumn was painting Austin in shades of gold and crimson. At 18 weeks pregnant, she could no longer hide her growing bump, but she'd stopped trying to. The woman who once apologized for taking up space was now embracing the room she needed. Her morning routine had become sacred. Coffee replaced with herbal tea, a walk around Lady Bird Lake, then work at Austin Community College where she'd quickly become indispensable. Students sought her out not just for academic guidance but for her genuine warmth and practical wisdom. "Ms. Chambers," said Maria Santos, a 19-year-old single mother struggling to balance classes with raising her toddler son. "I don't know if I can keep doing this. Taking care of Diego, working nights, trying to study. Maybe I should just drop out." Emily looked up from her desk, seeing something of herself in Maria's exhausted determination. "What would you tell your son if he wanted to quit something difficult but important?" Maria's shoulders straightened slightly. "That nothing worthwhile is easy." "Exactly. And you know what? When your son grows up and asks how his mom became a nurse, you'll be able to tell him you never gave up on your dreams even when it was hard." Emily pulled out a folder. "There's a child care scholarship program I think you qualify for. Let's fill out the application together." These moments, helping other women find their strength, filled Emily with purpose she'd never experienced. She was discovering that her capacity for love and support hadn't been diminished by Logan's betrayal. It had simply been redirected toward people who valued it. Her phone buzzed. A text from her sister Claire in Houston. "Logan called me again. 15th time this month. What do you want me to tell him?" Emily typed back, "Nothing. Block his number too." Claire's response was immediate. "Already done. Proud of you, sis." That evening, Emily attended her first prenatal class at Austin Birth Center. She debated going alone, knowing most participants would be couples, but Dr. Rivera, her obstetrician, had encouraged her. "Support comes in many forms," Dr. Rivera had said. "Sometimes the strongest support is the decision to show up for yourself." The class was taught by Janet Walsh, a certified midwife with kind eyes and a reassuring presence. As Emily settled onto her yoga mat, she noticed the other participants, couples holding hands, sharing excited whispers about nursery themes and name choices. For a moment, the familiar pang of loss threatened to overwhelm her. This should have been her and Logan, planning together, dreaming together. Instead, it was just her, and surprisingly, that felt like enough. "Let's start with introductions," Janet said. "Share your name and one thing you're looking forward to about becoming a parent." When it was Emily's turn, she placed her hand on her belly and spoke with quiet confidence. "I'm Emily. I'm looking forward to showing my baby what unconditional love looks like." The woman next to her, Jessica, smiled warmly. "That's beautiful. Are you here alone tonight?" "My partner couldn't make it," Emily said, which was technically true. Logan couldn't make it because he wasn't invited to be her partner anymore. After class, Jessica approached her in the parking lot. "I hope this doesn't sound presumptuous, but if you ever need a friend to talk to, here's my number." Being pregnant can feel overwhelming sometimes. Emily accepted the card gratefully. She was learning that kindness often came from unexpected places, and that community could be chosen rather than inherited. Meanwhile, in Dallas, Logan was discovering the opposite truth. His world was contracting with each passing day. Rebecca had made good on her threat to leave for Denver, but not before ensuring that her departure caused maximum damage to Logan's reputation. She'd told their mutual acquaintances that Logan had trapped her with promises of leaving his wife, only to panic when faced with real responsibility. The story wasn't entirely accurate, but it was close enough to the truth to be devastating. Logan's business partner David had officially dissolved their partnership the week before. "It's not personal," David had said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Janet's made it clear that supporting you means losing her friendship with Emily. And honestly, Logan, I can't look at you the same way anymore. The firm that had once thrived on Logan's charm and connections was slowly hemorrhaging clients. Word traveled through Dallas's professional community, but not uniformly. Some clients remained loyal, particularly those who didn't know Emily personally or valued Logan's professional competence over his personal failures. Others quietly moved their business elsewhere. The damage was real but gradual. Logan estimated they'd lost about 30% of their client base over 6 months, enough to cause serious financial strain, but not immediate collapse. His parents, Richard and Susan Mitchell, had driven down from Oklahoma to confront him about the mess he'd made of his life. The conversation had not gone well. "Emily was the best thing that ever happened to you," his mother had said, tears in her eyes. "She loved you the way every woman hopes to be loved. And you threw it away for what? Some young woman who ran at the first sign of difficulty?" "You don't understand," Logan had started. "I understand perfectly," his father had interrupted. "You're just like my brother Paul. Remember him? Cheated on Aunt Helen, lost his family, his business, everything. Spent the last 20 years of his life alone and bitter, wondering why no one wanted to be around a man who couldn't keep his word." The comparison stung because it was accurate. Logan was becoming the family cautionary tale, the example of how not to live. His attempts to rebuild his professional reputation were failing spectacularly. New clients were hard to find, and existing ones seemed to be looking for reasons to leave. The networking events he'd once dominated now felt hostile. Conversations stopped when he approached, and business cards were reluctantly exchanged with obvious discomfort. Most painful of all were the chance encounters with people who'd known Emily. Just last week, he'd run into their former neighbor, Mrs. Park, at the grocery store. The elderly woman had looked at him with such disappointment that he'd abandoned his cart and left without buying anything. "That poor girl," Mrs. Park had said loudly enough for other shoppers to hear. 7 years of marriage, and he threw her away like she meant nothing, while she was carrying his baby, no less. The whispers had followed him out of the store. Logan's drinking had increased steadily. Not enough to interfere with work, what work he had left, but enough to numb the constant ache of regret that had taken up residence in his chest. He'd sit in Emily's chair at their dining table, surrounded by reminders of their shared life, wondering how he'd convinced himself that Rebecca's shallow excitement was worth more than Emily's deep, abiding love. The ultrasound photo had become his torment. He'd had it framed and placed on his bedside table, a daily reminder of the future he'd destroyed. 22 weeks now. His child was growing inside a woman who had every reason to ensure he never met his son or daughter. His lawyer, Brad Hutchinson, had been brutally honest about his chances for custody or even visitation. "She has documented evidence of a 2-year affair," Brad had explained. "She has character witnesses, lots of them. She has financial stability and family support. You have, what exactly? A pattern of dishonesty and abandonment?" "I can change," Logan had insisted. "Maybe you can, but the court won't care about who you might become. They care about who you've proven yourself to be." Logan was learning that consequences didn't negotiate, that reputation couldn't be rebuilt with good intentions, and that some mistakes cast shadows that lasted far longer than the momentary pleasure that caused them. As he sat alone in his empty house, he realized that Emily hadn't just left him. She'd escaped, and with each passing day, as her new life took shape 3 hours away, the distance between them became less about geography and more about the fundamental difference between someone who honored love and someone who had never learned how. Emily's 20-week ultrasound appointment fell on a crisp November morning in Austin. As she lay on the examination table watching her baby move on the grainy monitor, Dr. Rivera smiled warmly. "Would you like to know the gender?" she asked. Emily's heart raced. This moment should have been shared with a partner, but instead of sadness, she felt a surge of anticipation. "Yes, please. Congratulations, Emily. You're having a son." "A son?" Emily's eyes filled with tears as she watched the tiny figure on the screen, his little fist near his face as if he was already preparing to face the world with determination. "Hello, baby boy," she whispered. Dr. Rivera printed several photos and handed them to Emily. "He looks very healthy. Strong heartbeat, good size. You're doing an excellent job taking care of yourself and him." As Emily drove home through Austin's tree-lined streets, she felt a profound sense of completeness. She was going to raise a son, teach him about respect, integrity, and how to love with his whole heart. She would show him what it meant to honor commitments and value the people who loved him. That evening, she called her sister Claire to share the news. "A boy!" Claire squealed from her Houston apartment. Oh, Em, I'm so excited. Have you thought about names? Liam? Emily said without hesitation. Liam James Chambers, after Grandpa James. Chambers? You're not keeping Mitchell? Emily looked around her mother's house at the photos of 3 generations of strong women, at the rocking chair where her grandmother had once nursed her own children, at the life she was building on her own terms. No, she said firmly. I'm going back to who I was before I lost myself trying to be who someone else needed me to be. Liam will be at Chambers. Meanwhile, in Dallas, Logan was experiencing his own moment of reckoning. He'd been sitting in his car outside Emily's old workplace for 2 hours, hoping to catch someone who might know where she was. When her former colleague Jennifer finally emerged, she spotted him immediately. Logan? Jennifer approached his car with a mixture of pity and disgust. What are you doing here? I need to find Emily. She's not answering my calls, and I need to know about the baby. Jennifer crossed her arms. The baby that you didn't know existed because you were too busy cheating on your wife to notice she was pregnant? That baby? The words hit like physical blows. I made mistakes. Mistakes? Jennifer's voice rose. Logan, Emily knew about your affair for months. She came to work every day pretending everything was fine while you were flaunting your girlfriend around town. Do you have any idea what that did to her? She lost 15 pounds because she couldn't eat without throwing up from stress. She cried in the bathroom during lunch breaks. She made excuses to her friends about why you couldn't attend gatherings together. Logan's stomach dropped. He'd convinced himself that Emily had been clueless until the end, that his affair had been discreet. She protected your reputation even while you were destroying hers. Jennifer continued. When people asked where you were, she made up work trips and family obligations. She covered for you until the very end, and you repaid her loyalty by making her feel like she wasn't enough. I want to make it right, Logan said desperately. There is no making this right. Emily is finally happy, Logan. For the first time in 2 years, she's laughing again. She's building a life that doesn't include walking on eggshells, wondering if today's the day you'll finally leave her for someone younger and more exciting. Jennifer turned to go, then paused. You want to do right by that baby? Leave Emily alone. She's already a better parent than you've ever proven you can be. That night, Logan found himself at Murphy's Pub, the bar where he'd first met Rebecca 2.5 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on him, sitting in the place where his life had started unraveling, drinking away the consequences of choices that had seemed so reasonable at the time. The bartender, Tommy, had known Logan for years. They'd shared countless conversations about sports, business, life. Tonight, Tommy's demeanor was noticeably cooler. Heard about you and Emily, Tommy said as he poured Logan's whiskey. Damn shame. She was good people. She still is good people, Logan mumbled into his drink. Is she? 'Cause word is you drove her out of town. Pregnant woman. Left everything she knew because her husband couldn't keep his promises. Tommy shook his head. My wife would have cut off my manhood if I'd pulled something like that. Logan looked around the bar and realized he was being watched. Conversations quieted when he passed. Old acquaintances nodded politely but didn't approach. He'd become a pariah in his own community, the man who'd betrayed the sweetest woman anyone knew. His phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. Saw the gossip blogs. Your wife's pregnancy is public now. Hope you're ready for everyone to know what kind of man you really are. Logan's blood ran cold. Gossip blogs? He quickly searched online and found the story on Dallas Society Watch, a website that covered local social events and drama. Insurance executive Logan Mitchell's secret shame. Wife flees during pregnancy after discovering 2-year affair. The article was brutal in its detail. Timeline of his relationship with Rebecca, quotes from anonymous sources about Emily's grace under pressure, speculation about custody battles and financial settlements. Someone had provided photos. Logan and Rebecca at various Dallas hotspots, Emily at charity events looking increasingly strained over the past year. The comments section was worse. Emily Mitchell was always so kind at our kids' school events. This is heartbreaking. I knew Logan in college, always thought he was selfish, but this is next level. That poor woman, pregnant and betrayed. Hope she takes him for everything. Rebecca Lane is just as guilty. What kind of woman knowingly destroys a marriage? Logan's professional reputation, already damaged, was now completely destroyed. No client would trust their family's financial future to a man who'd so publicly betrayed his own family. He called his mother, desperate for any kind of support. I saw the article, Susan Mitchell said before he could speak. Your father and I are ashamed, Logan. We raised you to be better than this. Mom, I know I messed up, but messed up? Son, you destroyed the life of a pregnant woman who loved you. You humiliated her publicly while she was carrying your child. This isn't a mistake. This is a pattern of selfishness that we apparently failed to correct when we raised you." The line went quiet for a moment before his mother continued, her voice heavy with disappointment. "Don't call us again until you've figured out how to live with the man you've chosen to become. Your father and I need time to figure out if we even recognize the son we thought we knew." She hung up, leaving Logan completely alone for the first time in his life. Back in Austin, Emily was experiencing the opposite revelation. She was surrounded by love, support, and possibility. Her mother had started knitting tiny blankets for Liam. Her colleagues had thrown her a surprise baby shower. The women from her prenatal class had invited her to join their new mothers group. As she assembled a crib in what would be Liam's nursery, Emily felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. She was creating a safe, stable world for her son, a world built on honesty, respect, and unconditional love. Her phone rang. Dorothy answered it in the kitchen, and Emily could hear her mother's firm voice. "No, she's not available. No, she won't be available. Stop calling this number." Emily didn't even need to ask who it was. Logan's desperation was irrelevant to her now. She had a future to build, a son to prepare for, and a life to live that didn't include room for people who had proven they couldn't be trusted with her heart. That night, as she felt Liam kick for the first time, Emily smiled in the darkness. "It's just you and me, little one," she whispered to her belly, "and that's going to be more than enough." December arrived in Austin with an unexpected warmth, as if the city itself was welcoming Emily's approaching due date. At 32 weeks pregnant, she moved with the careful grace of a woman who had learned to honor her body's needs. Her belly was round and proud now, and Liam's movements had become a constant, reassuring presence. Emily had thrown herself into preparing for single motherhood with the same determination she'd once devoted to saving her marriage. The difference was that this effort brought her joy instead of exhaustion. Her apartment, a cozy 2-bedroom place near the college, was nearly ready. The nursery walls were painted a soft sage green, and Dorothy had installed floating shelves filled with classic children's books. Emily had spent evenings reading to her belly, her voice growing stronger with each page. "Good night, moon," she read aloud, one hand resting on her bump. "Good night, stars, good night, air, good night, noises everywhere." Liam responded with a gentle kick against her ribs, and Emily laughed softly. "You like that one, don't you, baby boy?" Her phone buzzed with a text from Jessica, her friend from prenatal class. "Coffee tomorrow before your appointment? I want to hear about the nursery progress." Emily smiled as she typed back, "Absolutely. Fair warning, though, I might cry if you bring more baby gifts. These hormones are no joke." The response came immediately. "Tears of joy are required at baby showers. It's basically a rule." This was Emily's new normal: genuine friendships, supportive community, and the growing excitement about meeting her son. She'd built a life where she could be vulnerable without fear of betrayal, where her emotions were met with understanding rather than impatience. Meanwhile, in Dallas, Logan was experiencing his complete professional collapse. His insurance firm had officially closed its doors the week before. Without David's partnership, and with their client base decimated, Logan couldn't maintain the overhead. The final straw had been losing the Anderson Group account, a contract worth $500,000 annually that had been with the firm for 8 years. Robert Anderson himself had called to deliver the news. "It's nothing personal, Logan," he'd said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "But my wife Carol plays tennis with Emily's book club friends. The story's gotten around, and frankly, we can't be associated with someone who conducts business the way you've conducted your personal life." Logan had tried to argue that his marriage had nothing to do with his professional competence, but Robert had cut him off. "Character matters in this business. If you can lie to your pregnant wife for 2 years, how can I trust you with my company's financial future?" The office space that had once hummed with activity was now empty, except for Logan's personal items and boxes. 20 years of building a reputation, gone in 6 months. His financial situation was becoming desperate. The mortgage on their Dallas house was enormous. They'd bought it when his income was substantial, and Emily had been contributing her teacher's salary. Now, with no steady income and mounting legal fees, foreclosure was becoming a real possibility. His lawyer Brad had been blunt about Emily's divorce petition. "She's asking for minimal alimony," Brad had explained. "Essentially just child support and her share of marital assets. She's not trying to destroy you financially, Logan. She just wants to be free of you." The words stung because they revealed Emily's true nature. Even after everything he'd put her through, she wasn't seeking revenge. She simply wanted him out of her life completely. "What about visitation?" Logan had asked desperately. Brad had shuffled papers uncomfortably. "Logan, you abandoned your pregnant wife after a 2-year affair. She has documented evidence of emotional abuse through neglect. Unless you can prove dramatic personal change, no court is going to force a newborn away from his mother to visit a father with your track record. So that's it? I never see my son? That's up to Emily. And given your history, why would she trust you with her child?" Logan's desperation had driven him to increasingly pathetic attempts to reach Emily. He'd driven to Austin 3 times, only to be turned away by Dorothy, who had threatened to call the police if he didn't stop harassing her daughter. His most recent attempt had been sending a lengthy letter to Emily's workplace, begging for a chance to prove he'd changed. The response had come from Emily's supervisor, Mrs. Garcia. "Mr. Mitchell, Ms. Chambers has asked me to inform you that any further contact attempts will be forwarded directly to her attorney. She is focused on preparing for the birth of her son and does not wish to be disturbed during this important time. Your continued efforts to contact her despite her clearly expressed wishes demonstrate the same disregard for her boundaries that characterized your marriage. Please respect her decision and leave her in peace. Sincerely, Carmen Garcia, Student Services Director." The formal tone of the letter made Logan's situation crystal clear. Emily had moved on so completely that she needed other people to communicate her rejection of him. His drinking had progressed from nightly glasses of whiskey to afternoon beers to morning shots just to face the day. The house that had once been filled with Emily's laughter and warmth felt like a mausoleum of his failures. Rebecca had returned from Denver, but not to resume their relationship. She'd come back to collect her remaining belongings and deliver several devastating blows. "I've been thinking while I was away," she'd said as she packed the jewelry he'd given her, "about what I deserve for the damage you've caused to my reputation." Logan felt a chill. "What do you mean?" "I mean compensation. I gave up 2 years of my life for this relationship. I turned down other opportunities because I believed your promises about leaving your wife. Now I'm branded as the homewrecker who destroyed a pregnant woman's marriage. Rebecca, we're both dealing with consequences." "No, Logan. You're dealing with consequences. I'm dealing with collateral damage." Her voice turned cold. "I want $50,000. "What? I don't have that kind of money anymore." "Then sell something. The watch I bought you, your car, whatever it takes. Because if you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly how this affair started, including your promises that Emily was cold and frigid, and how you said she trapped you with marriage." Logan stared at her, finally seeing the calculated manipulation he'd been blind to. "You're blackmailing me." Rebecca's laugh was bitter. "I'm protecting myself. You destroyed everything. My reputation, my business relationships, my chances with anyone decent. The least you can do is help me start over somewhere else." After 2 hours of increasingly ugly negotiation, Logan agreed to liquidate his remaining investments to pay her off. It was either that, or face Rebecca's threats to contact Emily directly with invented details about their affair. "I loved what you represented," Rebecca said as she prepared to leave with her check. "Success? Excitement? Someone else's husband who thought he was too good for his ordinary life. I never loved you, Logan. I loved the idea of winning. And now I'm cutting my losses. The difference between us is that I'll survive this. You gave up everything real for something that was never supposed to last." After she left, Logan found himself in Emily's former craft room, surrounded by half-finished projects she'd abandoned when she fled. A baby blanket she'd been knitting was still stretched on its frame, soft yellow yarn that would have been perfect for either a boy or a girl, worked with the careful stitches of a woman who believed she was creating something for the family she loved. Logan picked up the blanket and held it to his chest, finally allowing himself to fully understand what he'd destroyed. Emily hadn't just been his wife, she'd been his home, his anchor, his chance at becoming a better man than he'd ever been alone. He'd traded that for Rebecca's empty promises and his own selfish desires. Now Emily was building a new home 3 hours away, preparing to welcome their son into a world where he would never know his father's voice or feel his arms around him. Logan sank to the floor of the empty room, clutching the unfinished blanket, and finally allowed himself to grieve, not just for what he'd lost, but for the man he'd proven he actually was beneath all his charm and success. In Austin, Emily was putting the finishing touches on Liam's room, surrounded by friends who celebrated her strength and anticipated her joy. She'd found her tribe, her purpose, and her peace. The contrast couldn't have been more complete. One life ending in isolation and regret, another beginning with love and hope. And soon, very soon, Liam would arrive to seal the distance between them forever. February in Austin brought unseasonably warm weather and the kind of golden sunlight that made everything feel possible. Emily, now 37 weeks pregnant, moved through her days with the careful excitement of someone preparing for the most important meeting of her life. Her baby shower had been held the previous weekend at her mother's house, a gathering of 20 women who had become Emily's chosen family over the past 8 months. Jessica from prenatal class, Mrs. Garcia from work, colleagues from the college, neighbors from her apartment complex, and Dorothy's friends who had known Emily since childhood. "You know what strikes me most?" Dorothy had said as they cleaned up afterward, folding tiny onesies and organizing diapers. "You're glowing in a way I never saw during your marriage. Even when things were good with Logan, you were always slightly anxious, like you were waiting for the other shoe to drop." Emily had paused in her organizing, considering her mother's words. "I think I was. I spent so much energy trying to be the perfect wife that I forgot how to just be myself. And now," Emily had smiled, rubbing her belly where Liam was practicing what felt like soccer moves. "Now I know exactly who I am. I'm going to be his mother. Everything else is just details." The nursery was complete now, a peaceful sanctuary done in soft greens and whites with a bookshelf already filled with classics Emily planned to read to her son. The rocking chair sat by the window where morning light would filter in during feeding times. Everything was ready except for the most important element, Liam himself. Dr. Rivera had been pleased with Emily's progress at her latest appointment. "You're handling this pregnancy beautifully," she'd said. "Your blood pressure is perfect. Liam's growth is right on track, and you seem remarkably calm for a first-time mother preparing to go solo." "I don't feel like I'm going solo," Emily had replied honestly. "I have more support now than I had when I was married." It was true. Her support system had grown organically. Women who understood that strength came in many forms, that love didn't require perfection, and that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was start over. Her phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "Hospital bag packed? Remember, comfortable going home outfit for you and Liam. I'll be there 30 minutes after you call." Emily smiled as she double-checked her hospital bag for the 3rd time that week. Claire had driven up from Houston to be her labor coach, taking vacation time from her job to ensure Emily wouldn't face delivery alone. "Everything ready, sweetheart?" Dorothy asked, appearing in the doorway with 2 cups of herbal tea. "I think so. It's strange, I'm not scared. Nervous, excited, but not scared. That's because you trust yourself now. You know you can handle whatever comes." Meanwhile, in Dallas, Logan was discovering just how far a man could fall when every support system abandoned him simultaneously. The foreclosure notice had been posted on his front door that morning. Despite his desperate attempts to negotiate with the bank, his financial situation had become untenable. The house he and Emily had chosen together, where they'd planned to raise children and grow old together, would be sold at auction within 30 days. Logan sat on the living room floor, surrounded by boxes and the debris of a life that had imploded. He'd been packing mechanically, trying to decide what deserved to be saved from the wreckage of his choices. Emily's things had been the hardest. Her books, her craft supplies, the small decorative touches that had made their house a home, he'd left them untouched for months, as if preserving them might somehow preserve the possibility of her return. Now, faced with the reality of moving into a studio apartment he could barely afford, Logan was forced to confront the finality of his situation. His phone rang. His mother's number appeared on the screen for the first time in 2 months. "Hello, Mom," he answered, his voice rough from disuse. "Logan." Susan Mitchell's tone was carefully controlled. "Your father and I heard about the house. News travels fast. Small-town gossip travels to Oklahoma, yes. Logan, we want to help, but you can't be seen supporting someone who destroyed his pregnant wife's life. I understand." There was a long pause. "That's not what I was going to say. We want to help, but we need to know you understand the severity of what you've done. This isn't about making mistakes, son. This is about who you chose to become." Logan closed his eyes, surrounded by the ghosts of Emily's presence in their empty house. "I destroyed the best thing in my life for someone who never cared about me. I lost my integrity, my reputation, my business, and my family. I understand perfectly. What are you going to do now? I don't know. Try to rebuild, I guess. Try to become someone worthy of, I don't know what. Emily will never forgive me. My son will grow up not knowing my name, Maybe that's for the best. Logan, no, Mom, it is. He'll have Emily, and Emily is worth 10 of me. She'll raise him to be the kind of man I never learned how to be. Susan was quiet for a moment. You're not beyond redemption, son. But redemption requires more than regret. It requires change. After his mother hung up, Logan found himself holding the ultrasound photo that had become his constant torment. 37 weeks now. His son could arrive any day, and Logan would learn about it the same way everyone else would, through gossip, secondhand information, and his own imagination. He'd written dozens of letters to Emily over the past month, each one more desperate than the last. None had been sent. What was the point? She'd made her position clear through her lawyer, through her family, through the absolute silence that met his every attempt at contact. His phone buzzed. A notification from a Dallas gossip blog he'd unfortunately started following. Emily Chambers, formerly Mitchell, spotted at Austin Birth Center this week. Baby watch is on for the woman who became a local hero after leaving her cheating husband. The comment section was brutal in its support for Emily. She looks radiant. That baby is lucky to have such a strong mama. Hope she never looks back. Some people don't deserve second chances. Logan Mitchell is probably the most hated man in Dallas right now. Logan threw his phone across the room, watching it shatter against the wall Emily had painted when they'd first moved in together. She'd been so excited about that wall, spending weeks choosing the perfect shade of blue, talking about how it would be the backdrop for all their future family photos. Now the wall was marked with scratches from furniture being moved, faded spots where their wedding photos had hung, and fresh damage from his own self-destruction. That evening, as Logan packed the last of Emily's abandoned possessions into boxes he planned to store indefinitely, he came across their wedding album. He opened it to a photo of Emily during their first dance, her face radiant with joy and trust, looking at him like he was everything she'd ever wanted. The man in that photo felt like a stranger, someone who had possessed everything Logan now knew was valuable and had been too foolish to recognize it. Logan carefully closed the album and placed it in the box marked Emily's Things, a collection of items he couldn't bring himself to discard but had no right to keep. 3 hours away, Emily was experiencing the opposite revelation. As she settled into bed in her peaceful apartment, feeling Liam's gentle movements, she realized she'd never felt more complete. Tomorrow, she would work her final day before maternity leave. Next week, she might hold her son for the first time. In a few months, she'd return to a job she loved, surrounded by people who valued her. She'd built a life worth living, filled with authentic relationships and genuine peace. The storm that had destroyed her marriage had ultimately cleared the way for something much better, a future based on truth instead of illusion, support instead of sacrifice, and love that didn't require her to diminish herself to receive it. As sleep approached, Emily's last conscious thought was a prayer of gratitude for the strength to leave behind what wasn't working, and the courage to build something that was. Emily's contractions started at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in mid-February, gentle waves that pulled her from sleep with a sense of anticipation rather than alarm. She'd been dreaming of holding her son, and waking up to labor felt like the universe's way of saying it was time to make that dream reality. "It's happening," she whispered to the quiet apartment, placing both hands on her belly. "Hi, baby boy. Ready to meet your mama?" Liam responded with a strong kick, as if he was indeed ready to begin the journey into the world. Emily had prepared for this moment with the same methodical care she'd brought to rebuilding her entire life. Her hospital bag sat by the door. Dr. Rivera's number was programmed into speed dial, and Claire was staying at a hotel 10 minutes away, waiting for the call. She timed 3 more contractions, still manageable, still spaced far enough apart that she had time to shower, eat a light breakfast, and call her birth team. "It's time," she told Claire when her sister answered on the first ring. "Oh my God, how are you feeling? Are you in pain? Should I come now?" Emily smiled at Claire's excited panic. "I'm feeling amazing, actually. A little nervous, mostly excited. The contractions are still pretty mild, but they're regular. Can you pick up Mom and meet me at the birth center in about an hour? We'll be there in 30 minutes. Claire, breathe. We have time. This isn't a medical emergency. It's the best day of my life happening exactly the way it's supposed to." By the time Emily arrived at Austin Birth Center, her contractions were stronger but still manageable. The birthing suite she'd toured months earlier was ready. Soft lighting, a large tub for water therapy, and windows overlooking a garden that was just beginning to bloom with early spring flowers. Janet Walsh, the midwife who'd taught her prenatal classes, greeted Emily with the kind of calm confidence that immediately put her at ease. "How are we feeling, Mama?" Janet asked as she helped Emily settle into the room. "Ready?" Emily said without hesitation. "I've been ready for months." "Doctor." Rivera arrived an hour later to check Emily's progress. "You're doing beautifully," she said after examining her. "About 6 centimeters dilated, and Liam's heartbeat is strong and steady. He's as eager to meet you as you are to meet him." Dorothy held one of Emily's hands while Claire captured every moment with her camera, per Emily's instructions. "I want him to see how much love surrounded his arrival," Emily had explained. "Even if it's not the family I originally planned, it's the family we chose." The birth progressed with textbook precision. Emily labored with a strength that amazed everyone in the room, including herself. During the most intense contractions, she focused on the same mantra she'd used to survive the divorce. "I am stronger than this moment. I can handle whatever comes." At 2:17 p.m., after 11 hours of labor, Liam James Chambers entered the world with a lusty cry that filled the birthing suite with pure joy. "Oh my God," Emily sobbed as Janet placed her son on her chest. "Oh my God, he's perfect. Hi, baby. Hi, Liam. Mama's here." Liam was indeed perfect. 7 pounds, 4 ounces of healthy baby boy with a shock of dark hair and the kind of alert eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. When Emily spoke, he turned toward her voice, already recognizing the sound that had been his constant companion for 9 months. "Look at him," Claire whispered, tears streaming down her face as she photographed Emily's first moments with her son. "He knows you're his mama." Dorothy leaned over to stroke Liam's tiny cheek. "Welcome to the world, sweet boy. You're so loved already." Emily couldn't stop staring at her son. All the pain of the past year, the betrayal, the loneliness, the fear, seemed to evaporate in the face of this overwhelming love. She'd thought she knew what love was during her marriage, but this was different. This was love without conditions, without fear, without the possibility of betrayal. "I'm going to be the best mother I can be," she whispered to Liam as he settled against her chest. "I'm going to show you what it means to keep promises, to choose family every day, to love without holding back." Meanwhile, in Dallas, Logan was learning about the birth of his son through the cruelest possible channel, social media. He'd been checking Emily's sister's Instagram obsessively, hoping for any glimpse of information about his child. Claire had kept her account private, but mutual friends sometimes shared updates that Logan could see in his feed. The post appeared at 4:23 p.m. Jessica from Emily's prenatal class had shared a photo of a hospital bracelet and a caption that made Logan's world stop spinning. "Baby Liam arrived safely this afternoon. Mama Emily was absolutely incredible, and this little guy is already stealing hearts. So much love surrounding this perfect boy. Baby Liam. New mama. Blessed." Logan stared at the screen until his vision blurred. Liam. His son had a name, a face, hidden in the hospital bracelet photo, and a life that had begun without him. He was a father, and he would never be a dad. The distinction hit him like a physical blow. Anyone could father a child. Logan was living proof of that. But being a father, being present for first smiles and first words and first steps, being someone his son could count on and look up to, that privilege belonged to men who had proven themselves worthy of it. Logan had proven the opposite. His phone rang. His mother's number. "Logan?" Susan's voice was gentle. "I saw online that Emily had the baby, a boy named Liam." "Yeah?" Logan's voice came out as a croak. "He's here. How are you holding up?" Logan looked around his sparse studio apartment, the place he'd moved to after losing the house, a space barely large enough for his remaining possessions and completely inadequate for visits from a child, even if such visits were possible. "I'm a father who will never know his son," Logan said. "I'm 35 years old, broke, alone, and my child is being raised 3 hours away by a woman who has every right to pretend I don't exist." Logan, "No, Mom, it's fine. It's what I deserve. Emily is an amazing mother. I could see it in the way she talked about the pregnancy before I destroyed everything. Liam will grow up knowing what unconditional love looks like, what stability feels like, what it means to be someone's first priority. He'll learn all of that from Emily. And what about you? What are you going to do?" Logan closed his eyes, thinking about the ultrasound photo he still kept on his bedside table, the one that showed Liam at 8 weeks when everything was still possible. "I'm going to try to become the kind of man who might someday deserve forgiveness. Not from Emily, that ship sailed, but from myself. Maybe someday, when Liam is old enough to decide for himself, I can show him that I learned from my mistakes. That's going to take a long time, son. I have nothing but time. Emily has everything that matters. She has him. After his mother hung up, Logan sat in his empty apartment, surrounded by the silence of a life he'd destroyed, imagining Emily holding their son for the first time. He pictured her face, the same radiant joy she'd shown on their wedding day, but this time directed toward someone who would never betray her trust. 3 hours away, Emily was experiencing that exact joy. As evening fell over Austin, she held Liam against her chest, marveling at his perfect tiny fingers and the way he seemed to study her face with serious concentration. "You're going to have such a beautiful life," she told him softly, "full of people who love you exactly as you are. You'll never have to wonder if you're enough, because you'll always be everything to me." Dorothy and Claire had gone home to let Emily rest, but sleep was impossible. She was too busy memorizing every detail of her son's face, too overwhelmed by the magnitude of love filling her chest. A nurse knocked softly and entered with paperwork. "Birth certificate information," she explained gently. "Father's name?" Emily looked down at Liam, who was sleeping peacefully in her arms. She thought about Logan, probably learning about the birth through gossip and social media, sitting alone with his regrets. "Leave it blank," Emily said firmly. "This baby has all the family he needs." The nurse nodded understandingly and made the notation. Emily Chambers, no longer Emily Mitchell, had given birth to Liam James Chambers, whose father was officially unknown and whose family consisted of people who had chosen to love him unconditionally. It was, Emily thought as she watched her son sleep, exactly the beginning he deserved. 6 months after Liam's birth, Emily had discovered that motherhood suited her in ways she'd never anticipated. The woman who had once apologized for taking up space was now confidently advocating for her son's needs, her own well-being, and the life she was building with fierce intentionality. Liam was thriving, a chubby, happy baby with his mother's gentle nature and an infectious smile that charmed everyone he met. At 6 months old, he was sitting up on his own, babbling constantly, and showing the kind of secure attachment that child development experts wrote about in textbooks. "He's never fussy at drop-off," marveled Sandra, the director of Little Sprouts Daycare. "Most babies this age have some separation anxiety, but Liam just lights up when he sees us. That's the sign of a child who feels completely secure in his primary attachment." Emily beamed as she watched Liam interact with the other babies, his confidence evident even at such a young age. "He knows he's loved," she said simply. "That makes all the difference." Returning to work at Austin Community College had been easier than Emily expected. Her colleagues had rallied around her, creating a support system that made single motherhood feel manageable rather than overwhelming. Mrs. Garcia had even arranged for Emily to have a flexible schedule that allowed her to pump milk in privacy and leave early for pediatric appointments. "You're glowing again," Jessica observed as they sat in a coffee shop near campus, watching Liam charm the other patrons from his high chair. "Remember when we first met in prenatal class? You were beautiful then, but you looked guarded, like you were protecting yourself from something." Emily considered this as she helped Liam hold his sippy cup. "I think I was protecting myself from disappointment. I'd spent so long being disappointed that I'd forgotten what it felt like to just exist peacefully. And now? Now I wake up excited to see what Liam discovers each day. Yesterday he figured out how to clap his hands. You would have thought he'd solved world hunger the way I celebrated." Emily's life had developed a rhythm that felt sustainable rather than exhausting. Mornings with Liam before daycare, meaningful work helping students achieve their goals, evenings filled with baby giggles and bedtime stories, and weekends exploring Austin's parks and farmers markets with her son. She'd found peace in her independence, something that surprised her after years of defining herself through marriage. "You look so content," Claire observed during their weekly FaceTime call, Liam babbling happily in the background. "Like you finally figured out who you are." "I think I have," Emily said, adjusting Liam on her lap. "I'm not someone's wife anymore trying to be perfect for approval. I'm just me, Liam's mom, and that feels like enough. More than enough. Look at how happy he is." Emily looked down at her son, who was currently trying to grab the phone to put it in his mouth. "He's never known anything but stability and love. He doesn't have to wonder if he's enough, because he always is." "And you? Any regrets about not looking for someone new?" Emily was quiet for a moment, bouncing Liam gently. "None at all. I know what real love looks like because I feel it for Liam every day. I'm not interested in settling for anything less than that level of commitment and respect. And honestly, I'm too busy building our life to worry about adding complications." Meanwhile, in Dallas, Logan was struggling through his own version of rebuilding, though his progress was far more painful and uncertain. After losing his partnership with David and about 40% of his client base, Logan had been forced to downsize dramatically. He'd managed to avoid complete business collapse by taking on smaller accounts and working twice as hard for half the income. The transition from owning a successful firm to scrambling for clients was humbling and exhausting. Eventually, when keeping his reduced practice became unsustainable, he'd found work as a junior associate at a small insurance firm, a significant step down from owning his own company, but steady income that allowed him to maintain his small apartment and begin paying down the debts accumulated during his business decline. His new boss, Tom Bradley, was a no-nonsense man in his 60s who'd hired Logan despite his reputation. "I believe in second chances," Tom had said during the interview, "but I don't believe in third chances. You screw up here, and you're done in this industry forever." Logan had thrown himself into the work with the desperate energy of a man trying to prove his worth to himself as much as to others. He arrived early, stayed late, and took on the accounts that other associates avoided: difficult clients, complicated cases, anything that might demonstrate his commitment to rebuilding his professional integrity. His personal life remained largely empty. The few friends who still spoke to him did so with obvious discomfort, and his attempts to date had been disasters. Word of his betrayal of Emily had spread through Dallas's social circles like wildfire, making him radioactive to any woman with sense. The loneliness was crushing, but Logan was beginning to understand that it was also necessary. He'd spent his adult life surrounded by people who'd enabled his selfishness or been too polite to challenge his behavior. Now, stripped of those buffers, he was forced to confront who he actually was when no one was watching. He'd started therapy, something he'd resisted during his marriage, claiming he didn't need help. Dr. Amanda Walsh was a straight-talking woman who specialized in helping people rebuild after moral failures. "You're focused on external validation," she'd observed during a recent session. "You want to prove to the world that you've changed, so they'll forgive you and let you back into the club. But that's not how real change works." "Then how does it work?" "You have to become someone different when no one's watching, when there's no audience to impress, no immediate reward for good behavior. Can you be honest when lying would be easier? Can you keep commitments when breaking them would be more convenient? Can you prioritize someone else's needs when your own desires pull in a different direction?" Logan had left that session understanding that his real work was just beginning. The external consequences of his betrayal, lost business, damaged reputation, social isolation, were painful but temporary. The internal work of becoming someone trustworthy was much harder and would take much longer. He'd also started attending a support group for men who'd destroyed their families through infidelity. The meetings were held in a church basement, led by a man named Robert who'd lost his wife and children 15 years earlier, and had spent the time since trying to understand why good people made devastating choices. "The thing about betraying someone who loves you," Robert had said during Logan's first meeting, "is that you don't just hurt them. You kill something in yourself. The part that was capable of receiving unconditional love dies because you've proven you don't deserve it." Logan had recognized the truth in those words immediately. Emily's love had been the best thing in his life, and he'd systematically destroyed it through selfishness and cowardice. Now he had to learn how to live as someone who'd thrown away something irreplaceable. His phone buzzed with a notification he'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure: a social media post from one of Emily's friends showing Liam at a playground, laughing as Emily pushed him on a baby swing. The caption read, "Best mama and the happiest baby. These two are living their best life in Austin. Single, mom strong. Blessed baby." Logan stared at the photo for a long time. Liam looked like a perfect blend of both parents. Emily's gentle eyes, Logan's dark hair, and a smile that was purely his own. He was clearly thriving, dressed in bright colors, and looking at his mother with the kind of adoration that spoke of absolute security. Emily looked radiant, not in the careful, anxious way she'd looked during their marriage, but with the natural glow of someone who was exactly where she belonged, doing exactly what she was meant to do. Logan saved the photo, adding it to a folder on his phone labeled Liam, a collection of glimpses into his son's life that he'd gathered from social media posts and mutual friends' updates. It was pathetic, he knew, but it was the only connection to his child he was likely to ever have. That evening, as Logan sat in his sparse apartment, he wrote another letter he would never send. "Dear Liam, today I saw a picture of you laughing with your mom at a playground. You're 6 months old now, sitting up. exploring the world with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you're completely loved. I want you to know that you have a father who thinks about you every day, who wishes he could be the kind of man your mother could trust with your heart. I want you to know that my absence from your life isn't because I don't love you. It's because I love you enough to not disrupt the beautiful, stable world your mother is building for you. Maybe someday when you're old enough to understand, we'll meet. Maybe by then I'll have become someone worthy of being called your father. Until then, I'm grateful that you have Emily, who will show you what real love looks like. I'm sorry for all the ways I've failed you before you were even born. Love. Logan folded the letter and placed it in a box with all the others. Dozens of unsent messages to a son who would grow up not knowing his father's name. It was, he reflected, exactly what he deserved. And more importantly, exactly what Liam and Emily deserved too. 1 year after Liam's birth, Emily stood in the backyard of the small house she'd just purchased in Austin's Bolden Creek neighborhood, watching her son take his first wobbly steps across the grass toward her outstretched arms. "Come to Mama, sweet boy," she called, her voice bright with encouragement as Liam tottered forward with the determined concentration of someone conquering the world one step at a time. He made it 3 steps before sitting down hard on his diaper-padded bottom, but instead of crying, he clapped his hands and babbled excitedly, as if he'd just accomplished something magnificent. "He did it!" Claire squealed from the porch, where she and Dorothy were setting up for Liam's first birthday party. "Emily, did you see? He walked." Emily scooped up her son, spinning him around as he giggled with pure joy. "You did it, baby boy. You're walking." The backyard was already filling with guests, friends from work, mothers from Liam's daycare, neighbors who'd welcomed Emily into the community with open arms. The life Emily had built in Austin was rich with genuine connections, people who knew her story and respected her strength. "You look amazing," Jessica observed, appearing at Emily's side with a cup of coffee. "Confident, peaceful, completely in your element." Emily bounced Liam on her hip, looking around at the gathering she'd organized entirely on her own. "I feel like I finally know who I am. Not someone's wife, not someone trying to be perfect for approval, just me, Emily, Liam's mom. That's enough. More than enough," Jessica agreed with a smile. "You're thriving." The party was a celebration not just of Liam's first year, but of Emily's complete transformation. The woman who had once apologized for existing was now confidently hosting gatherings in her own home, making decisions based on her values rather than fear, and raising a son who radiated security and joy. As guests arrived, Emily realized she'd created something she'd never had before, a chosen family built on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than obligation or convenience. Mrs. Garcia brought homemade tamales and stories about her own experience as a single mother. Sandra from the daycare contributed a photo album of Liam's first-year milestones. Even Dr. Rivera stopped by with her own children, delighted to see how well both Emily and Liam were thriving. "Speech!" someone called out as they gathered around Liam's high chair for cake time. Emily looked around at the faces surrounding her, people who had witnessed her journey from broken wife to confident mother, who had supported her without judgment, who celebrated her victories without needing credit for them. "A year ago, I thought my life was ending," she began, her voice steady and clear. "I thought losing my marriage meant losing my future, my identity, my chance at happiness." Liam babbled from his high chair, reaching for the birthday cake with its single candle, and the crowd laughed warmly. "Instead, I discovered that my life was just beginning. This little boy taught me that love doesn't have to hurt, that family doesn't require perfection, and that sometimes the most beautiful things grow in the spaces left by what we thought we couldn't live without." She looked at Liam, who was now successfully smearing frosting across his face and tray. "Happy birthday, sweet boy. Thank you for teaching me what unconditional love really means." Meanwhile, in Dallas, Logan was experiencing his own form of reckoning on this anniversary. He'd known it was Liam's first birthday. The date was etched into his memory like scar tissue. He'd taken the day off work, unable to imagine focusing on insurance policies, while his son celebrated a milestone Logan had no right to witness. The support group meeting that evening was smaller than usual, just 4 men sitting in the church basement sharing their stories of loss and the slow, difficult work of becoming better people. "Today's my son's first birthday," Logan said when it was his turn to speak. "I found out through Instagram that he's walking now. His first steps happened in the backyard of the house his mother bought, a house I'll never see, in a life I'll never be part of." Robert, the group leader, nodded with understanding. "How does that feel?" Logan considered the question. 6 months ago, the answer would have been pure anguish, desperate regret, plans for grand gestures that might somehow earn forgiveness. Now the truth was more complex. It feels right, Logan said slowly. That sounds terrible, but it's honest. Emily has built exactly the kind of life I should have given her when we were married. She's confident, peaceful, surrounded by people who value her. Liam is growing up secure and loved. They're both better off without the chaos I brought to their lives. That's growth, Robert observed. Accepting that love sometimes means staying away. Logan had made significant progress over the past year. His work performance had earned him a promotion and his boss's grudging respect. His therapy sessions with Dr. Foster had helped him understand the patterns of selfishness that had destroyed his marriage. He'd paid off most of his debts and was slowly rebuilding a life based on humility rather than entitlement. But the most important change was internal. Logan had stopped trying to find ways back into Emily and Liam's lives and started focusing on becoming someone who might deserve forgiveness someday, even if that forgiveness never came. I've been writing letters to my son, he continued. Letters I'll never send. I tell him about who I am now, what I've learned, how sorry I am for not being the father he deserved from the beginning. Maybe someday, when he's old enough to understand, I'll give them to him. Maybe not. Either way, writing them helps me remember why I need to keep working on myself. After the meeting, Logan drove to the cemetery where his grandfather was buried. Walter Mitchell had been the kind of man Logan was trying to become, someone who kept his word, honored his commitments, and put his family's well-being above his own desires. I wish you were here to meet your great-grandson, Logan said to the headstone. His name is Liam and he's perfect. He's got Emily's gentle nature and what I hope are some of the better parts of our family's stubbornness. He'll grow up knowing what integrity looks like because Emily will teach him. Logan pulled out his phone and showed the headstone a photo he'd saved from Emily's friend's social media. Liam in a tiny tuxedo t-shirt at his birthday party, chocolate cake smeared across his grinning face. Emily did that, created a child who radiates joy and security. She's the kind of parent you were, Grandpa, the kind I never learned how to be. As Logan drove home to his modest apartment, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not happiness, exactly, but acceptance. He'd destroyed the most important relationship of his life, lost the chance to raise his son, and spent a year learning to live with consequences that would never fully go away. But he'd also stopped lying to himself, stopped making excuses, and started the long process of becoming someone he could respect. That evening he wrote another letter to Liam. Dear son, today you turned 1 year old. I saw pictures of your party, your first steps, your face covered in birthday cake. You look so happy, so loved, so completely secure in the world your mother has built for you. I want you to know that I'm proud of the man I'm becoming, even though it's too late for us to be a family. I'm learning what it means to keep my word, to think about other people's needs before my own, to build a life based on truth instead of convenience. Maybe these lessons will matter to someone someday. Maybe there's a woman out there who will benefit from the ways I'm learning to love without selfishness, or children who will have a better father because of the work I'm doing now. It won't be you, and that's the hardest truth I've ever had to accept. But watching you thrive with your mother has taught me that love sometimes means wanting someone's happiness more than your own presence in their life. Happy birthday, Liam. I love you enough to stay away. Your father, Logan sealed the letter and placed it with all the others in the box he kept in his closet. A record of a father's love for a son who would grow up never knowing his name. It was, he reflected as he prepared for bed, exactly what Emily and Liam deserved. A life free from the complications of his presence, filled instead with people who had earned the right to be there. 3 hours away, Emily was tucking Liam into his crib in their new house, singing the same lullaby she'd hummed to her belly during pregnancy. Today was a good day, wasn't it, sweet boy? She whispered as Liam's eyes grew heavy. So many people who love you. So many reasons to celebrate. Liam reached up and touched Emily's face with his tiny hand, and she felt the same overwhelming love that had sustained her through the darkest period of her life. Tomorrow we'll have another adventure, she promised, and the next day and the day after that. Just you and me and everyone who chooses to love us. That's more than enough. As she turned off the light and headed downstairs to where Dorothy was finishing the cleanup from the party, Emily realized she'd achieved something she'd never thought possible. A life that felt complete exactly as it was, requiring no one's validation or participation to be beautiful. She'd lost a marriage but found herself. She'd been betrayed but learned to trust again. She'd been abandoned but created a family. Logan had taught her what love wasn't. Liam had taught her what love was. And Emily had taught herself that she was strong enough to build happiness on her own terms, surrounded by people who had proven they deserved a place in the life she was creating. It was, she thought, as she accepted her mother's proud hug and looked around at the life she'd built through her own strength and determination, exactly the ending she and Liam deserved. 3 years later, the autumn afternoon in Austin was perfect for a playground visit. Warm enough for Liam to run around in his favorite dinosaur t-shirt, cool enough for Emily to enjoy her coffee without melting. At 4 years old, Liam was a whirlwind of energy and curiosity, fearlessly climbing jungle gyms and making friends with every child he met. "Mama, watch this," he called out, hanging upside down from the monkey bars with the kind of confidence that made Emily's heart swell with pride and terror in equal measure. "I'm watching, brave boy, be careful," Emily called back from the bench where she sat grading papers from her night classes. She'd completed her master's degree in counseling the year before, and was now working toward her license as a family therapist, specializing in helping women rebuild after betrayal. Her life had taken on a rhythm that felt both purposeful and sustainable. Days at the college helping students navigate their academic journeys, evenings with Liam exploring Austin's parks and libraries, weekends filled with the chosen family she'd built: Dorothy, Claire, Jessica, and a circle of friends who had proven their loyalty through presence rather than words. "Ms. Emily," called Maria Santos, the young single mother Emily had helped years ago, who was now a registered nurse and one of Emily's closest friends. "Liam's showing off for the new kids again." Emily looked up to see her son demonstrating how to properly slide down the big slide to a group of younger children, his natural leadership qualities already evident. He was patient with the scared ones, encouraging with the hesitant ones, and protective of anyone who needed help. "He gets that from you," Maria observed, settling beside Emily on the bench. That way of making everyone feel included and safe. Emily watched her son with the kind of deep contentment she'd never experienced during her marriage. "He's never known anything but unconditional love. It shows." "Any regrets?" Maria asked gently. She was one of the few people who knew Emily's full story, having been there through the final stages of her transformation. Emily considered the question seriously. "About leaving Logan?" "Never." "About Liam not having a father figure?" "Sometimes I wonder, but then I watch him interact with the world and I see how secure he is. He knows he's loved completely. He's never had to question his worth or wonder if someone's going to abandon him. That's worth more than having a father who couldn't be trusted." Liam ran over, cheeks flushed from playing, and climbed onto Emily's lap with the easy affection of a child who had never been rejected. "Mama, can we get ice cream?" "I shared my crackers with the new girl and she said her mama might let her have ice cream too if I asked nice." Emily smiled, recognizing Liam's natural diplomacy skills. "Let me meet her mama first and then we'll see about ice cream." As they walked toward the ice cream truck, Emily felt her phone buzz. A text from Jessica. "Saw the news about Logan. Thought you should know." Emily's stomach tightened slightly. She'd successfully avoided news about Logan for 3 years, focusing entirely on building her future rather than dwelling on her past. But curiosity won. "What news?" she texted back. "DUI arrest. Lost his job again. It's in the paper." Emily felt a familiar pang, not of longing or regret, but of sadness for the man Logan could have been if he'd chosen differently. She deleted the text thread without responding and tucked her phone away. That evening, after Liam had been bathed, read to, and tucked into bed with his collection of stuffed animals, Emily sat in her living room with a cup of tea and reflected on how far they'd both come. Their house was small but perfect for them. 2 bedrooms, a backyard where Liam could play, and walls covered with his artwork and photos of their adventures together. It was a home built on stability, honesty, and joy, rather than obligation or fear. Her phone rang. Dorothy's nightly check-in. "How's my grandson?" Dorothy asked, settling into her own evening routine back at her house just 20 minutes away. Exhausted from a full day of conquering playground equipment and making friends. "How was your book club?" "Enlightening as always. We finished reading Educated tonight. Lots of discussion about the strength it takes to leave toxic families and build something better." Dorothy paused. "Speaking of which, Claire mentioned you heard about Logan today." Emily wasn't surprised her sister had already shared the news. Their family had no secrets anymore. "I did. It's sad, but it doesn't change anything for us." "Good. You've built something beautiful, Emily. Liam is thriving. You're helping other women find their strength and you've never been happier. Logan's choices are his to live with. After hanging up, Emily checked on Liam one more time, finding him sprawled across his bed with his arms around his favorite teddy bear, a gift from Claire that had become his most treasured possession. "Sweet dreams, my brave boy," she whispered, brushing his dark hair away from his forehead. "Mama loves you more than all the stars." Meanwhile, 200 miles away in Dallas, Logan was experiencing the consequences of his latest poor decision. The DUI arrest had cost him his third job in 3 years. His drinking had progressed from social lubrication to daily necessity, and his ability to maintain professional relationships had deteriorated accordingly. At 38, he was living in a rundown studio apartment, working temporary jobs when he could find them, and struggling with the reality that his life had never recovered from the choices he'd made 5 years earlier. His support group had expelled him after multiple relapses. His parents had stopped taking his calls after he'd asked them for money one too many times. His few remaining acquaintances tolerated him out of pity rather than affection. But the lowest point had come 6 months earlier, when he'd attempted to contact Emily through her work email, begging for a chance to meet Liam. The response had come not from Emily, but from her attorney. "Mr. Mitchell, Ms. Chambers has made her position clear regarding contact from you. Any further attempts to reach her or her son will be considered harassment and will be prosecuted accordingly. Ms. Chambers has built a stable, loving home for her child, who knows nothing about you and has never asked about a father. She will not risk his security to satisfy your desire for contact. Do not contact this office or Ms. Chambers again. Respectfully, Sarah Williams, attorney at law." The letter had shattered Logan's last hope of redemption through grand gestures or persistent appeals. Emily had moved on so completely that his existence was irrelevant to her happiness. The realization had driven him deeper into drinking, which had led to the DUI, which had cost him his job, which had brought him to this moment, sitting alone in his apartment on a Tuesday night surrounded by empty bottles and the wreckage of a life that had never recovered from his betrayal. His phone buzzed, a notification from Facebook, showing him a memory from 5 years ago, a photo of him and Emily at a charity gala, both dressed up and smiling at the camera. Emily's smile had been genuine then, trusting, full of love for the man she thought she'd married. Logan studied his own face in the photo and barely recognized the confident, successful man he'd once been. That man had possessed everything: a beautiful wife who adored him, a thriving business, respect in his community, and the promise of a future filled with shared dreams. That man had thrown it all away for 2 years of meaningless sex with a woman who had abandoned him the moment things became complicated. Logan deleted the Facebook app from his phone and threw the device across the room, watching it shatter against the wall just as his life had shattered against the rocks of his own selfishness. 3 hours away, Emily was falling asleep in her comfortable bed, planning tomorrow's activities with Liam and looking forward to another day of the peaceful, purposeful life she'd built from the ashes of her broken marriage. She slept deeply, surrounded by love and security, while Logan lay awake in his empty apartment, haunted by the ghost of what he'd destroyed and the man he'd chosen not to become. The contrast was complete, the consequences permanent, and the lesson crystal clear. Actions have consequences, character matters, and some mistakes echo for a lifetime. Emily had learned that love shouldn't require you to diminish yourself. Logan had learned that some things, once broken, can never be repaired. And somewhere in Austin, a 4-year-old boy slept peacefully in his bed, surrounded by unconditional love and completely unaware that he'd been saved from chaos before he was old enough to remember it. It was, in the end, exactly the story each of them deserved. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please leave a like to help me out, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next stories. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.